Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another episode of Overbooked, the series where I talk about every single book on my shelves because past Judith was innocent and naive. Time travel abilities to go back and just tell myself not to start projects or to maybe think for 5 minutes before starting a project probably would be helpful. Anyway, today we're very quickly going to talk about Nevernight and then we're going to veer off into a very different direction. Bear with me, the roller coaster has started. So, next book on my shelves in alphabetical order, which is what Overbooked essentially is. We're missing some gaps here and there, but that's kind of the vibe. Next up would be Nevernight. Now, I could pretend I don't own these. I could pretend I don't own these in hardback. I could pretend I don't own the third book of these in hardback 3 separate times. But that wouldn't be accurate, it wouldn't be true, and I thought I would challenge myself to make this video because, as I talked about in my TJ Clune video, I do think we should be able to make content about these things while acknowledging that they're problematic. And in this case, I don't think it's the same thing as Cerulean Sea, so let's talk about it. I've made content around these books in the past, I've brought them up in videos past, and I wanted to make a definitive no, you should not read these video and give you some recommendations of other things to read. Because if you didn't know, this series, kind of problematic. J. Kristoff, not the best human. And I would say, who would have thought? But in hindsight, it's one of those things where I was turning a blind eye and being like, oh, I know, it's not like that great, but for quite a long time, and I wanted to firmly say, I don't want to read these anymore. I even debated rereading them for this series. After all of the stuff, when I knew I was going to make this video slightly differently, I started reading Nevernight, and I just went, I can't anymore. I don't want to, but I am a steward for these books while they exist, for the materials that make them. I'm figuring it out, okay? So I'm not going to talk about the actual content of these books and the subsequent, I don't want to say controversies, but that's kind of the vibe, because you can look them up for yourselves and that's not what I want to make this video about, and I think other people have said it much better than I ever could. I sort of wanted to skip over the review section of this video and skip straight to the end where I usually do comparisons and talk a bit more about some other things you could read if either you have read Nevernight and you're looking for something to not replace it, but to fill a different book-shaped gap in you somewhere, or if you've heard about this and there are elements of it you liked and you're like, oh, I might have liked that, but I've heard some dodgy stuff. What else should I read? That's what this video is for. This is what I would replace Nevernight with in all of the videos where I've mentioned it before. That's what this video is. I think the most obvious one is a book that does something with the narrator queries that happen in Nevernight and the footnotes, and that is, of course, Chorus of Dragons by Jen Lyons. This is a epic, chunky, big fantasy series, epic fantasy. Wacky narrators, footnotes, weird narrative structures. I have a video up on the first 3 of these that you can go and watch if you're interested. But I really love this series, and one thing I really love is that Jen Lyons is so unapologetic about all the queer elements of her story, and I think really tries to portray them sensitively while not, coddling them in a way. I really enjoy all of the relationships in the series. I really enjoy the character growth and development across the so far 4 books. I have the 5th book in my NetGalley TBR and I'm so excited. Obviously this is quite an undertaking. This is only book 1 and they get chunkier. Believe it or not, I can't pull it out, but name of all things is here. So it's an endeavour, but it's an enjoyable endeavour, and it is very much a, will my emotions be torn apart in this book? Will I laugh? Will I cry? I don't know yet. That's the kind of series we're talking about here. The first book, Ruin of Kings, is my least favourite of that series, so power through Ruin of Kings. It gets better from there. Disaster main character who keeps making bad decisions and being manipulated by people in a way that gets kind of annoying towards the end of the book. The Poppy War. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba. Hey! This is a similarly violent book. It's violence in a very different way. It's much more military violence, I think, in my opinion, having recently read all of these again, and I need to film a video on them at some point. I do think Rin and Mia have some similar qualities in their convictions, for better or for worse, and their stubborn-headedness. That's where I would go with that. I think that The Poppy War tails off as a series towards the end. That was my kind of final verdict, but the first book is really good, and so if you were looking for that kind of slightly broken disaster main character, this is a great example of that. The next category that I wrote down in my notes when I was thinking, what are the qualities of this series that I would like to replace? One of them is, who are the bad guys? Are we the bad guys? And for that, the Greenbone Saga. I do feel like I'm bringing up a lot of books that I talk about all the time in the series, and I'll come on to that on the end, so bear with me. This, I very recently made, I say very recently, towards the end of 2021, made a video talking about this series as a whole. I think it's fantastic, and one of the things I really love about this is the constant questioning as a reader am I following the quote-unquote good guys of the story, or are there none? And I think the idea of heroes versus villains is really interesting in this series, and I think actually is picked apart in a bit more of a nuanced way, which may not be what you're after, but I certainly prefer it. Is pitched much older, the characters are still having to make very difficult decisions and make very different moral choices. I really love this series. There are fight scenes that I think bear some similarity, and just great character work. I really enjoy these. Great. A couple that I do not own, but I have read. If you want saucy assassin-esque kind of stories, and I'm using saucy because I think that's the word that most comes to mind for me, Robin the Fever's, what's it called? The Courting Darkness series. I think that this series is not perfect by any means. I read them probably 4 or 5 years ago now. We've been living in like our house 2 houses back, so pre-booktube I read them, and they are in a lot of ways very silly assassin stories with very predictable romance arcs in them. They were fun. I had a good time. There's a lot of like corsets and hiding your knives in various parts of your outfit so that you can stab someone later. It was a good time. I enjoyed it. I think I'd probably like to do a reread of that series before really wholeheartedly recommending it, because I don't remember a huge amount. I just remember the general vibe of having a good, you know, it's not a bodice ripping time. It's like a bodice slicing open with your knife that you've had hidden in your bodice time. That's what I remember. If you want bisexuals with swords, very different vibe. And I've only read the second one. I didn't know I'd read the second one. I really thought I'd read the first one. Bizarre. Ellen Kushner's I've not written what the series is called, so editing Judith is going to have to pop that in on the lower screen. I read the second one, which is called The Privilege of the Sword, and it is bisexuals with swords. It's great. It's not in as much of a fantasy setting, it's more of a historical kind of setting. I really enjoyed reading that book, and I would like to go back and read the first one, now that I know it's the first one, and then reread the second one with that knowledge. Past Judith, why do you make these choices and do these things? That was even after I'd stopped reading the second book and sequels without caring about the first. Like, I remember the time I had made a decision to stop doing that. I just didn't Google it for like 1 minute. Other queer characters in Cities Living Their Best Lives. Foundryside is another one that I bring up all the time that has some great main characters, and the romance in that is really sweet. Do I still need to read the second one to determine whether I recommend that series? Oh yes, but I don't think it's going to go wrong for me. And that's what Judith said when she started this series. I've ended my notes with, honestly, just read Sarah J Maas. It at least knows what it is. Because I'm not saying that all these books I've just mentioned are like completely unproblematic, never question it, it's all fine, you can read these and you'll never have to retract any statements ever, because that's not the world we live in. And if you try to only review books that you can be 100% sure are, you know, purely good, great, never going to be questioned books, you'll never read anything except from people who died a very, very long time ago. And at this point, even that, you know, dodgy stuff. This has been like an exercise in trying to reconcile the kind of attitude I had of like, oh, I'm aware that this book is like kind of problematic, but I just like it as a book. And I think I can safely say like, I don't anymore. There are too many elements of this story that I cannot sit with anymore. And there are better things to read. And that's partly why so many of these books are the books that I talk about in every single video. I think I've brought up the Greenbone Saga in every video since like 2019, probably. I couldn't think of another book that really evoked the same feeling as Nevernight evoked in me when I read it at 3 a.m. in 2016. Yeah, it was before we were even married. And I think that I've had to realise that maybe that had more to do with the fact that it was 3 a.m. in 2016 than anything else. I have so many books that I love and I love to recommend, and I trust other people who've recommended them to me. And maybe one day I'll have to do another one of these where we talk about maybe things you should read other than one of these. But for the moment, I know that I don't want to recommend this series, so these are what I would recommend. I don't really know where to go with this one, as ever. It's the tricky thing of even making a video talking about what you don't like or what you don't recommend can be promoting people reading it in some ways. Maybe that's the case. I can't control what anyone else does or what anyone else thinks about anything. I can only do my best with what I am given. And I'm going to have to do my best again next week because we have to talk about Illuminati. Oh, I have to go check my lateral flow test, so we should finish this off very quickly. Fingers crossed it's negative. Just as a postscript to this, I'm aware I could have just cut this out of my video schedule, but I find that A, changing my video schedule is incredibly stressful for me. I needed to do it. And also, it was important to me to make this video, to put some alternatives out there because of the amount of times I mentioned Nevernight in past videos. I don't do it anymore. but I had done in the past. So here is my definitive, that's what it was. What else would you recommend? I'm particularly looking for girls with swords. My search history while scripting this video was like girls with swords, books, girls with swords, swords, girl, books, stabby books. So please recommend all of the above down below. All of my information and ways to support the channel will be linked down below, which you can check out while you are commenting. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. It's gonna be some bloopers now. Moments after putting on this dress that is not a dark colour, I did spill coffee on it. So this video, which is already fairly complicated, is off to a great start. Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. You're Judith and I'm watching. That's not how it works. Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another video in my series. I haven't filmed in over a week, can you tell?